Welcome to The Explainer. I am so thrilled to guide you through today's topic. We live in a world entirely driven by a use and throw mentality. Generating literal mountains of trash is often just accepted as the normal cost of doing business. But today, we're going to completely dismantle that assumption. We're going to look at the massive structural shift from traditional, highly destructive waste management toward a bold but absolutely achievable goal: ultimate waste elimination. So let's dive into the science, the economics, and the philosophy of the zero-waste paradigm.
Before we can go about fixing a broken system, we really have to understand its components. When we break down our current urban waste crisis, the numbers are actually staggering. A whopping 35% of it is just organic material, and another 30% is paper. That means nearly 2/3 of what we routinely throw away is biologically degradable or highly recyclable. Throw in construction at 12%, plastics at 9%, plus valuable metals and glass, and you quickly realize something crucial. This isn't just trash, it's a massive, mismanaged inventory of valuable resources.
Here is our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start with the urban waste crisis, move into the zero-waste paradigm, and outline the zero-waste hierarchy. Then we'll get into the practical applications, the 3R framework, reduce and reuse strategies, and finally, the mechanics of recycling.
Section 1. The Urban Waste Crisis. Let's examine this broken system.
When we toss something away, there really is no magical away. Traditional waste disposal methods, which basically just mean incinerators and landfills, carry profound unseen costs. Right off the bat, they contribute significantly to climate change by pumping out greenhouse gases. But honestly, it's so much more than just emissions. By burying or burning these items, we are permanently destroying materials that could have easily been reused, recycled, or composted. And because we're destroying these perfectly good materials, we force the continuous, incredibly energy-intensive extraction of brand new raw materials to replace them. It's a vicious cycle that just compounds our environmental problems instead of solving them.
Section 2. The Zero-Waste Paradigm, a fundamental shift in design.
Let's formally define what we're actually talking about here. The zero-waste approach means designing and managing products and processes to systematically eliminate both the volume and the toxicity of waste. The ultimate goal is to conserve and recover all resources, rather than just burning or burying them. Think of it like this. The objective isn't to get slightly better at managing our trash. No, the objective is to completely design waste out of existence in the very first place.
If we compare our human industrial systems to nature, a really glaring flaw becomes obvious. Our current economic model is basically a linear, one-way street. Take, make, dispose. We take resources, we make a product, and then we just throw it out. But if we look at successful strategies in nature, we see a perfectly circular system. In nature, every single process is designed so that discarded materials from one cycle become the vital, life-giving resources for another. There's literally no such thing as waste in a forest. There's only food for the next cycle. Zero Waste aims to redesign human enterprise to copy that flawless natural blueprint.
Section 3. The Zero-Waste Hierarchy, how we prioritize our actions.
Think of the zero-waste hierarchy as an inverted pyramid, ranking our options from the best to the absolute worst. At the very top, our most favored option is to reduce and conserve. That means preventing waste at the source before it's even created. Right below that, highly favored, is designing for sustainability, where manufacturers actively build products for cyclical use. Further down, still favored, is reuse and recycle to recover those materials. And at the very bottom, the least favored options by far are energy recovery and disposal. That's the burning and burying we unfortunately rely on way too heavily today. Understanding this academic framework is crucial because our first instinct should always be prevention, not disposal.
Section 4. The 3R Framework, turning philosophy into practical action.
To really grasp the mechanics of product use, we have to look closely at consumer behavior. The data clearly shows that as a society gets wealthier, its waste generation actually skyrockets. More affluence leads to highly diversified consumables and, consequently, a massive explosion in packaging. This puts a crushing burden on local municipalities. However, prudent consumption can prevent a huge fraction of this trash from ever being created, and by simply segregating our discards at the source, we allow for incredibly efficient diversion away from dumping sites. This structured approach, reduce, reuse, recycle, is the essential established model for modern urban waste treatment.
Section 5. Reduce and reuse strategies, tackling our highest priorities.
First up, reduce. As we saw in the hierarchy, this is absolutely the most favored preventative measure.
The whole idea behind reduction is simply to decrease the volume of waste requiring treatment in the very first instance. Think about it. If a piece of trash isn't created, it doesn't need to be managed, it doesn't need to be recycled, and it certainly doesn't end up in a landfill. It is the ultimate preventative choice.
So, what do actionable reduction strategies actually look like? Well, first, it's about engineering, improving product design so manufacturing uses fewer raw materials right out of the gate. Second, it takes education to fundamentally shift consumer purchasing patterns. Third, we can use economics to our advantage by providing real cost incentives that reward consumers for buying products with little to no packaging. And finally, leveraging technology. Things like transitioning from physical paper newspapers to online formats effortlessly saves massive amounts of resources. It's about smart design and behavioral shifts working perfectly in tandem. Okay, once we have reduced everything we possibly can, we move to the second R, reuse. Reuse is the practice of taking segregated materials and utilizing them again either completely as is or with just minor repairs. This step is incredibly vital because it keeps perfectly functional materials out of the landfill, and it does so while requiring almost zero additional energy input. Practical measures for reuse touch on both producer responsibility and local economics. For instance, we can persuade manufacturers to utilize multi-trip, reusable packaging that gets collected and used over and over again. Retailers can offer real incentives or discounts to consumers who return things like bottles or cartons in good condition. At the community level, we absolutely need to develop thriving local markets for used goods, ensuring furniture and electronics find a second life rather than a dumpster. And as consumers, we should be actively selecting products designed for multiple cycles, like rechargeable batteries.
Section 6. The mechanics of recycling. Dissecting the procedural flow.
Recycling is strictly defined as the recovery of solid waste components for possible use as raw materials, ensuring they are treated and manufactured into something completely new. Now, I want to stress a really critical point here. In our academic hierarchy, recycling is the third component. It should only ever be enacted after all reusable materials have been separated and saved. It's not our first line of defense, it's our safety net.
A successful recycling loop relies on a very specific four-stage process. Stage 1 is collection, gathering all those recyclables from the community. Stage 2 is segregation, separating the different wastes either on-site or at a central facility. Stage 3 is sorting and cleaning, compacting and preparing the materials to meet strict industry standards. And finally, Stage 4 is the sale. This is absolutely key. If manufacturers don't actually buy these recovered materials to make new consumer products, the entire loop breaks down entirely.
When executed correctly, a comprehensive recycling system pays immense, holistic dividends. It drastically shrinks the raw volume of trash heading to polluting incinerators and landfills. By diverting these materials, we substantially lower environmental pollution and greenhouse gas emissions. Economically, it conserves natural resources. And because manufacturing with recycled materials usually requires way less energy than using virgin raw materials, the energy savings are huge. Plus, recycling facilities directly contribute to local employment, generating more green jobs for far less investment compared to massive waste disposal plants.
However, we do need to address a necessary bit of academic nuance here. Implementing zero waste isn't without its systemic roadblocks. Sometimes global financial structures actually conflict with these sustainability goals. Right now, highly attractive funding is often handed out to massive waste disposal projects, like large-scale incinerators by bodies like the Clean Development Mechanism. While the intention might be to manage waste, heavily subsidizing the disposal of materials seriously undermines efforts to promote the actual zero waste concept because, as we've learned today, true zero waste focuses on prevention and circularity, not just building better burn plants.
And that brings us to a really crucial realization. We started this explainer by looking at human industrial systems versus nature's perfection. Nature has no waste. So I want to leave you with a provocative thought drawn directly from our analysis today. If the core advantage of the zero waste concept is to completely eliminate waste rather than just figure out where to put it, are we as a society currently managing waste, or are we really just stubbornly managing our own inefficiency? Think about how you can start demanding better design rather than just better disposal. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the systems around you.